Being a professional mountain biker, travelling the world and racing your bike in some of the most incredible places around sounds like living the dream, doesn't it? But there's a great deal of travel involved and many nights away from home. Oh. So just how much does a professional downhill racer travel in a year? Let's find out. The average professional World Cup downhill racer will race approximately 18 races a year all over the world, including several World Cup rounds, the World Champs, Nationals and more. Add on the training camps, promotional events, shows, festivals and meetings, and these athletes face over 100 days a year away from home in hotels and on the road. That's a lot of bad coffee at breakfast, but even more air miles. But just how many exactly? We stalked two-time world champion and veteran pro downhill racer G. Atherton to find out. He's been racing World Cup since 2004 and has been travelling the world long before that, so he's no stranger to the jet-setting lifestyle. Looking at his 2018 season, we've calculated roughly how many miles G has travelled from his home in Powys, Wales, and using Manchester International Airport as his main hub for global trips. To give you an idea of the time required to make all these flights, G spent over a week in the air or hanging out at airports, checking in or picking up luggage. It's a lot of time. So let's get into the nitty gritty. First of all, we can split G's travel into three categories: training and testing, racing and promotion. Training and testing alone, G went on 4 different trips this last year. The aim of these trips is to get bike and body ready for the season and in tip-top condition. Back in January, he headed out to California for some winter sunshine and intense training. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? Oh, I'd love to do that. However, it isn't all fun in the sun. This is time to get everything firing on all cylinders. Travel-wise, this is a biggie right off the bat. From the UK to base camp, he travelled a total of 5,371 miles. Back to Europe, and the following month, G was in San Romolo, Italy for a testing session. Less about body and all about the bike, which added another 910 miles onto his total. Add to this more testing in Malaga, Spain, and back to San Romolo again. G did a total of 8,419 miles just to get the bike and body ready for the season. And boy, was he ready. With training done, it's time to go racing. In late March, G headed to his first race in Lycra, Portugal, where he raced the Portugal Cup and bagged himself second place. Great start, but it cost him another 1,057 miles of travel. Back to the UK and the first round of the British national downhill races in Kumkan before flying to Croatia and the town of Losinj, the first World Cup of the year. A new venue, new track, and it was a relentless beast at that. G finished that round in 19th place, and for it he travelled 1,014 miles. It's racking up, isn't it? In fact, why don't we ask the man himself? So G, what is your top travel tip?
Top tip for travelling is not to get there late and not to get there hungover. It's both these things make your life absolute hell.
So you've done all this travelling, G. I mean, you must have had some nightmares. What's the worst thing you've ever had? Lost bikes, delays, disasters? Tell us.
Things going wrong when you're travelling is always part of it. I've had everything happen to me you could imagine. Getting to the wrong airport, arriving and discovering you've gone to the wrong place, missing flights, leaving your bikes at airport, bikes not turning up, crashing hire cars on the way to the airport, crashing hire cars that should have been returned days before. But it's all part of it, and I think when you get used to it, you take these things in your stride and they're all part of the experience.
Back home to the UK for a rest? No. Time to travel up to Fort William twice. First, the national downhill round, followed closely by a World Cup round, each trip collecting him an extra 383 miles each time. Straight after the race on Sunday, the Athertons made the trip straight down to Leogang in the Austrian Alps, a monster 1,364 miles. There, G races the third round of the World Cup season, and by now G has already spent 79 hours. That's over 3 days in planes and airports. And then G heads home again for some of Mama's pasta. But then heading back out to the Alps and Leger, this time with brother Dan for the second crankwork weeks of the season. Lots of bike riding and racing throughout the week, as well as promoting and representing the all-important sponsors. That adds another 728 miles to the tally. And no mama's pasta. And then to Val di Sole in Italy just a few weeks later for round 4 of the World Cup. Unfortunately, it was here that G suffered 2 breaks in his wrist. Definitely not why he travelled 1,094 miles. Despite the wrist injury, our gallivanting athlete made it over to Andorra for the 5th round of the World Cup. Another unfortunate result for G as he travelled 1,055 miles with a busted wrist to then suffer a mechanical in his race run. Ouch! Oh my god, so frustrating. That is mentally tough as well as physically draining. Who said the life of a pro was easy? If nothing else, these last 2 trips demonstrate that perfectly. Now what about that important category, promotion? A huge part of the job is promoting the all-important sponsors. They make all of this travel possible at the end of the day. So a lot of energy needs to be focused on providing them with the time needed to keep all the ads, the marketing ideas, the photo shoots and the meetings happening. With promotion in mind, G is heading to London with his sister Rachel, who happens to be 5-time downhill world champion and a fellow Red Bull teammate. They're there for the Ride London, a big road cycling sportif. But that wasn't the only time he visited London this year. Earlier in March, he headed there for the London Bike Show, where he was meeting the fans, hanging out on the Trek stand, once again being the face of big brands and representing his sport. These 2 events alone clock him up another 392 miles of travel, just for promotion. Back to the serious stuff, the racing. And the start of August saw the 6th round of the World Cup in Mont Saint Anne, Canada. A huge 3,385 mile trip and a great 8th place result for G in some slick conditions and with a recovering wrist, but it's all coming good for Mr. Atherton. Back home, then back out to the final round in Le Brèche, France, where the battle of the World Cup season and all that travelling became worth it. G threw down a storming run in very difficult conditions and came away with 2nd place. Yay! Wap, 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 wah. Unfortunately, that good result wasn't enough. It was too late and he couldn't get onto the GB team for this year's World Champs. But nevertheless, G still headed out to Lenzerheide, Switzerland for a spot of presenting and sibling support for Rachel, adding 1,167 miles to his travelling total. After world travel and exotic locations, the last race of the year for G was just 29 miles from home. Red Bull Hardline, probably one of the most technically demanding tracks in the world. He stole the race and walked off with his first Hardline victory. Coincidentally, the shortest distance he had to travel for a race all year. Isn't it just the way? Racing may be over for another year, but G still has a couple more events to cover for 2018. The Red Bull Fox Hunt will be back in Rostrevor, Ireland this year, and it's approximately 227 miles from G's home. But that's not all. G will be heading to Red Bull Rampage in the US at the end of October. No, he won't be racing, but he has 2 second place Rampage finishes under his belt already. This promotional trip will be his biggest yet, a whopping 5,305 miles. So, let's do a little bit of a nana listens. I've lost the ability to speak. So what are we looking at so far? That's 26,783 miles of travel, but that's just one way, so we need to double that to get G back home again, which gives G Atherton a final travel total this year of 53,566 miles, which is 86,206 kilometers, made up of 45,085 miles in the air and 8,481 on the ground. That's a lot of miles. Enough, in fact, to go around the circumference of the globe twice. That's incredible. Or it's enough to hammer out about 30,785 runs of the Fort William World Cup downhill track. That is a lot of practice. So next time you think you have to travel a long way to ride or race your bike, think again, because now you know how much G Atherton has to do. And while we're on the subject of G Atherton, why don't you check out that video there where I overtook him in the middle of the race. Yes, that's right. Make sure you hit the old globe to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, like, and enjoy that travel to get to ride your bike. See you next time.